WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. This is West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink, WADR's comprehensive news package. Let's begin with our top stories. The Malian government announces a plan to formulate 2 decrees to facilitate the peace and reconciliation agreement. Officials in Nigeria lead campaigns to end open defecation as the 2025 deadline draws nearer.
We actually thought that it was necessary to, look around these facilities because we know that ending open defecation requires facilities to be put in place in public places, in markets, in schools, and all that.
And the World Health Organization (WHO) today marks its 75th anniversary and lauds its success in making health a human right.
The WHO Constitution was the first document in history to formally recognize health as a human right. Since then, the world has made significant progress towards realizing that vision.
Stay with us for details of this and more.
Here is Abdoulahi Hassane with Newslink.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Sources in Mali say the government is showing its willingness to work for the implementation of the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement through the creation of 2 draft decrees. The implementation of the agreement has been a concern for some time because of disagreement between signatory movements in the country. Faced with this situation, MINUSMA, the United Nations Peacekeeping Force in Mali, calls on the parties to cooperate fully to respect the unity of Bamako. Francis.
The implementation of the peace agreement in Mali is stalling. The government intends to correct the shortcomings by adopting 2 draft decrees. The text specifies the creation of an administrative cell at the level of the National Commission for Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration (DDR). According to the authorities, since the beginning of the process, the DDR commands have registered more than 74,600 ex-combatants, of whom more than 1,700 have been integrated into the armed forces. These de-radicalized combatants are deployed in the field. Authorities also said that regional branches of the National Commission would be established. Meanwhile, tensions is rising between the signatories of the June 14, 2014 platform of movement on the draft new constitution and within the permanent strategic framework composed of the Coordination for Azawad movement and other groups belonging to the platform. In a statement, MINUSMA said it was concerned by this new tension and urged the signatory parties to the peace agreement to show more restraint, cooperate and respect Mali's unity, sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Francis Boniface filed that report. In Burkina Faso, Colonel Major Celestin Sempore has been installed as Chief of the General Staff of the Army. Appointed on March 31, the new head of the Burkinabe Army intends to intensify the fight against terrorism. Colonel Sempore on Thursday received his anointment from the Minister in charge of National Defense, succeeding Colonel Major David Cabre. Moeded has more details in this report by WADR's Ouagadougou correspondent, Martin Kaba.
Colonel Major Celestin Sempore takes command of the Burkinabe Army at a time when it has begun an offensive against terrorist groups. And after the passing of the baton, symbolized by the flag of Burkina Faso, the new Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces intends to maintain the line of action until the final victory over terrorism. Appointed on March 31 by the Burkinabe strongman Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the new SEMGA succeeds Colonel Major David Cabre at the head of the army.
The offensive dynamics in progress these last weeks will be accentuated to counter the armed groups. Indeed, our fighting forces have begun an important shift in the conduct of the war with the extreme intensification of pressure on the armed terrorist groups. The objective is now to motivate this dynamic or to completely reverse the trend. And to do so, we must more than ever commit ourselves individually and collectively.
Prior to his appointment, he was Deputy Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces and Commander of the National Theatre Operations Command. The new army chief would thus lead and further direct the fight against the long-running insurgency in the Sahelian nation, which has left thousands of civilians, police and soldiers dead and forced more than 2 million people to flee their homes. Around 40% of the nation's territory lies outside government control, forcing the Burkinabe government to impose curfew on the north and parts of the center-east region to aid the fight against terrorists.
That was a report by WADR's Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba and voiced in our studios by Imo Edet. Meanwhile, a new French envoy to Ouagadougou has been named by Paris. The appointment of Mohamed Bouadala, 45 years old, was validated by President Emmanuel Macron at the end of March 2023 in the Council of Ministers. According to sources, this followed a series of appointments of ambassadors to African countries, including Burkina Faso. Bouadala now replaces Luc Haladi, who was recalled by Paris in late January following a request by the Burkinabe Authority. The new diplomat is the current Deputy Director of Political Affairs at the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ouagadougou will be Mohamed Bouadala's first ambassadorial duty post if his accreditation is confirmed. This new ambassador was appointed at a time when relations between Paris and Ouagadougou is deteriorating. The Togolese government has announced the date for the commencement of the electoral census ahead of the regional and parliamentary elections in the country. The exercise would allow the establishment of a database and electoral file for the state of Togo. The decision was reached by the weekly Council of Ministers chaired by President Foya Singbe. Matisi completes the story.
Togo says the electoral census will take place from April 29 to June 3, 2023. This period was chosen according to a schedule established by the Independent National Electoral Commission, CINI. The decision to open and close the electoral registration period is contained in a decree adopted by the government. The presidency, in a statement, stated that the scheduling is in consideration of the opening and closing of the period of establishment of the electoral list fixed by the decree in the Council of Ministers on a proposal from the electoral umpire. For the public authorities, this new electoral census was recommended following the work of the National Consultation Between Political Actors, CNAP. The political actors, however, reiterated the need to constitute a new electoral register capable of conferring a reliable character on the next elections in the country. CINI additionally informs that the census material was recently tested and the data entry operators, OPS, are currently undergoing training. Togo is expected to hold elections for the National Assembly by December 2023.
Matisi reporting.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
As the 2025 deadline set by Nigeria to end open defecation draws nearer, government agencies are intensifying sensitization campaigns for citizens to embrace the use of public toilets being constructed across the country. In Abuja, Nigeria's capital, the authorities in 2021 promised to construct 10,000 such facilities around the capital city. But so far, less than 100 of the facilities have been constructed. In this report, WADR's Abuja correspondent Usman Omar says employees and users of the facilities already in use are happy and urging the government to construct more.
According to the latest published data by UNICEF, West and Central Africa accounts for 14% of global open defecation, with 8 countries having more than 5 million open defecators, including Nigeria, which ranks second in the world with 47 million. In 2021, Nigerian government declared a state of emergency on open defecation and set the target of ending the practice in 2025. To this end, the FCT administration initiated a policy of providing 10,000 public toilet facilities in all corners of the territory through a public-private partnership. Some of these facilities have been completed and are already in use at some strategic locations in the territory. The team is therefore going round to remind residents of the existence of these facilities and to encourage them to use them. National Coordinator Clean Nigeria used the toilet campaign under the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, Mrs. Chizoma Okpara, speaks on the importance of the campaign.
We actually thought that it was necessary to look around these facilities and then also to create an awareness around it, because we know that ending open defecation requires facilities to be put in place in public places, in markets, in schools and all that.
Representative of FCT Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Agency, Malam Sani Balakaru, speaks on the wash facilities being constructed by the FCT administration.
This is a partnership program that attracts investors willing to come into public toilet sector. The administration will give them land, then they will invest, build and maintain the facility.
Managers and workers at the public toilets visited expressed gratitude as they say they are now gainfully employed, while members of the public who have been using the public toilets also thanked the FCT administration for providing such standard facilities.
WADR's Usman Omar in Abuja reporting there. Today, the World Health Organization, WHO, marks its 75th anniversary. In 1948, countries of the world came together and founded WHO to promote health, keep the world safe, and serve the vulnerable. The constitution establishing the Global Health Agency became the world's template and blueprint for pursuing universal health coverage. This means everyone, everywhere, can and should be able to attain the highest level of health care. Since its creation 7 decades ago, WHO says this year's event is an opportunity to look back at public health successes that have improved quality of life as well as motivate action to tackle the health challenges of today and tomorrow. Here's Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of WHO.
The WHO Constitution was the first document in history to formally recognize health as a human right. Since then, the world has made significant progress towards realizing that vision. Life expectancy globally for both sexes has increased from 46 to 73 years, with the biggest gains in the poorest countries. Smallpox has been eradicated, and polio is on the brink. These are actually two of the important highlights during the 75 years of existence of the organization. 42 countries have eliminated malaria. The epidemics of HIV and TB have been pushed back. 47 countries have eliminated at least one neglected tropical disease. In the past 20 years alone, smoking has fallen by a third. Maternal mortality has fallen by a third, and child mortality has halved. Just in the past 5 years, new vaccines for Ebola and malaria have been developed and licensed. And for the past 3 years, WHO has coordinated the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the most severe health crisis in a century.
The WHO chief, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, speaking there. And just before the recap, discussions on civic space has taken center stage at the ongoing Conference on Civic Space Protection and Promotion in Dakar, Senegal. Representatives from 5 civil society organizations in Senegal engaged in debates surrounding human rights and the limitations in the country. The conference also raised concerns regarding state governments restricting the freedom of activists. Stay with us as WADR's Tawfiq Abdel Nasser in the second half of the news engages Oyebisi Oluseyi, Executive Director of the Nigerian Network of NGOs, who's attended the conference. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The Malian government announces a plan to formulate 2 decrees to facilitate the peace and reconciliation agreement. Officials in Nigeria lead campaigns to end open defecation as the 2025 deadline draws nearer. The World Health Organization, WHO, today marks its 75th anniversary and lauds its success in making health a human right. Ahead in the news, authorities in Cameroon announced the abduction of at least 25 civilians during days of fighting in the border area with Nigeria. We also have the guest interview and sports news with Sankule Janko. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Remember, we are live on Facebook and streaming on WADR.org. This is Newslink. Let's take you to Cameroon, where authorities on Thursday announced the abduction of at least 25 people during a week of attacks by unknown armed men in the western region. The abduction, according to officials, took place in several villages in Akko district along the Nigerian border. Meanwhile, residents of neighboring Abafum, Akwancha, and Abutu villages in the same region have all fled their homes due to the attacks. Ogebirika has more.
Patrick Kenyuta, a top official in Akko, said the federal government has deployed the military to rescue those abducted and help the injured. Akko, where the abductions took place, is not prone to attacks, and many people fleeing the separatist violence have sought refuge there. Those who succeeded in fleeing the area because of the attack that began last week recounted civilians being tortured if they refused to give the assailants money. Several others were taken away from their families, Ta said. It's unclear who is responsible for the abductions, but officials believe that it could be others from Nigeria who regularly cross into the Central African nation with their cattle. This border crossing has often resulted in deadly clashes between the nomads and locals in the border communities. According to reports, residents have been calling on the authorities to increase security in the area as armed gangs operate on both sides of the border. Cameroon has since 2017 witnessed growing insecurity since English-speaking separatists launched a rebellion with the stated goal of forming a breakaway state. Yaoundé has, however, repeatedly accused the separatists of committing atrocities in the conflict that has killed more than 3,300 people and displaced more than 750,000 others.
Ogebirika reporting there. Today is Good Friday, and Christians in Liberia join the rest of the world to commemorate the day Christians believe that Jesus Christ was crucified. Christianity is by far the most common faith in Liberia, with surveys showing Christians making up over 86% of the population. WADR's Dalton Popper spoke to Liberians on the streets of Monrovia about the season.
We as a Christian should always celebrate Easter because Christ died for our sins. And during the time of Easter is when Christians remember that God went through trial, temptation, and he died on the cross of Calvary. And after 3 days, he resurrected. But that we as Christians see it's very important to celebrate Easter, to remember what Jesus Christ has been through on the cross of Calvary for our sins. For me, I would rather celebrate my Easter by doing some charity. I will give back to the society. I will give back to impact and making others to know the importance of Easter.
What I know about Easter is that Easter is a Christian holiday where Christians celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. It is a cultural something that Christians all around the world celebrate this day, commemorating the resurrection of Jesus from death. Easter is a day of celebration because Christians believe it is a source of hope and joy in Christian life. And therefore it's important because it reminds us about Jesus' resurrection and his death.
We celebrate Easter every year because we remember Christ Jesus. Because he paid a lot of prices for us. Without him, we're not going to be alive today. We have to sit at our very homes or go to churches because he did a lot of things for us that we can pay him back, but we just have to appreciate him. So as a Christian, be home, teach your children what Christ died on the cross for us and what some of the measures you think you can give to other people as well.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The discussion on civic space has taken center stage at the ongoing conference on civic space protection and promotion in Dakar, Senegal. Representatives from civil society organizations engaged in debates surrounding human rights and their limitations in the country. The facilitators at the conference highlighted the Open Government Partnership OGP platform, which has been in existence for over a decade, as a means of encouraging state governments to allow citizens to express their opinions without fears of prosecution. During the conference, Oyebisi Oluseyi, the executive director of the Nigerian network of NGOs, served as a guest speaker. Oluseyi tells WADR's Tawfiq Abdul Nasser why several CSOs still do not have access to information about the OGP, which can make their advocacy efforts more effective. He also emphasized the potency of the platform in safeguarding governance throughout the sub-region.
For any human endeavor, there's also the need for you to refresh your memory, improve or deepen understanding that are necessary for you to then continue to play your role and play it. And when you look at issues around civic space itself, when we're talking today, we said the definitions are not, there is no one formal definition, but we all work within this space differently when you look at the dimensions that we mentioned. So I do think that the civil society community in Senegal, they're vibrant, they do understand their role, and when you check the press, you would see a lot of pushbacks around some of the shrinking space-related activities that we're seeing on the ground, and also in the region, as it were. But today's session is to deepen that understanding, especially for collective action, and to see how we can, going forward, mobilize our sector in ways that improves the space and continues to open it. Of course, while looking at areas where we need to engage with government, deepen that engagement, using platforms such as the Open Government Partnership to extract commitments from government on deepening civic space.
Talk about the open government platforms. You mentioned that even in Nigeria, the government actually committed to it, yet during the NSAS protest, we saw what happened. Why do you think that happened, even though the government was committed to that?
So there was a commitment around civic space. However, we did not move the needle on implementing those commitments. And recall that whatever commitment that has been made, it is owned by government and civil society. So it's a co-created plan. So if you're going to put the blame anywhere, it will be on the doorsteps of civil society and also of government themselves. But what we saw with NSAS also is the need for us as a continent and also as a country to deepen how protests are policed and also deepen how protests are seen as a form of social listening and a form of reviewing and reforming policies and laws that affect the common man. And you saw in the room today how we did that role play and then asking, if you're in government, how would you have acted? And you saw many people saying what they would have done that are, reflective of what you see, action you see those in government taking at this time. But we want to reverse that role and say, let's understand what protests mean. Let's understand the role of dialogue. Let's understand the fact that when citizens protest, it is their right to do that, and the police would have to provide security cover for them. And if they are counter-protest as well, the police would also have to provide security for those that are also doing counter-protest. So whether you are for or against, it is the role of the police to technically be neutral. We need to get to that stage where those institutions in governance, all right, understand that it is their role to ensure expression.
That was Oyebisi Oluseyi, the executive director of the Nigerian networks of NGOs. It's now time for sports news. Let's join Sankule Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Confederation of African Football, CAF's Executive Committee has unanimously agreed on behalf of African football to support Morocco's FIFA World Cup 2030 bid. It has been reported Morocco recently announced at the 73rd FIFA Congress in Kigali, Rwanda, that it is bidding to host the FIFA World Cup 2030 in partnership with Spain and Portugal. The president of CAF, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, said the unanimous decision that was taken by the CAF Executive Committee to support Morocco's bid to host the FIFA World Cup 2030 means that the bid of Morocco is now the beat of the African continent. The South African billionaire further stressed that they are now focusing on ensuring that Africa once more hosts the FIFA World Cup and are committed to working together with all football national associations and confederations to make this happen. In another news, a decision was also taken by CAF to open the bid for hosting the Africa Cup of Nations 2027 because of the request by numerous CAF member associations and their governments to host the African competition. Meanwhile, reigning African champions Senegal have been overtaken by Morocco as the top-ranked team in Africa. The latest Coca-Cola FIFA World Rankings saw Senegal drop from first to second ahead of Tunisia in third. The Triangle Lions could not maintain their top standings despite a home and away victories against Mozambique in the AFCON qualifiers last month. World Cup semi-finalist Morocco topped the African rankings and slightly missed the top 10 in the world in 11th position. Senegal, who have been the top-ranked team in Africa for about 5 years, sits in second place in the continent and 18th in the world. Tunisia, Algeria and Egypt complete the top 5 ranked teams in Africa. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Many thanks, Sankle Janko, for those sports update. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM Banjul, and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM Lofa County, and in Ghana on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. Iyaz Bilimu has been a console, and Mustafa Sek is managing the social media feed. Do interact with us via social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English Service, and stream live on WADR.org. I'm Abdoulahi Hassane. Good afternoon.
News, talk, music. Get it all 24 hours on West Africa.